All right. Hey there. My name is Susan Leahy. I'm the creator of Robert's Rules Made Simple, and I specialize in working with boards that use Robert's Rules of Order to help them understand the fundamentals and how to use the fundamentals as a tool to get more work done. And we're not just getting work done, we're getting work done in a healthy, productive dynamic. So I'm excited to talk to you today about Robert's Rules of Order and how you can leverage these rules to get more out of your meetings.
Hi, I'm Mark Banicevich. Welcome to Governance Bites. And as you just heard today, I have the pleasure again to be talking across the ocean with Susan Leahy to have a conversation about Robert's Rules of Order. And
Mm,
really, the best person I could possibly be speaking to about these rules because you've made your business around Robert's Rules. Uh,
yes.
and and I've worked on a board, an international board, where we were trained on in Robert's Rules and used those for the meeting. And so a lot of boards that I've encountered have never really heard of Robert's Rules.
Yeah.
They move in second motions, but they don't really know the source of it. And so having a
Yeah.
conversation with you about this is going to be very, very interesting and hopefully give some people a good introduction to what Robert's Rules are. So could you start then by giving us an overview of Robert's Rules of Order? What are they and how did they evolve?
Okay, so Robert, let's start with like who is Robert
Hmm.
anyway, right? Who is Robert and why do we follow his rules? So Robert, he was actually a general in the U.S. Army. His name was General Henry M. Roberts, and he was asked to chair not only a meeting within the Army but also his church group. And he thought it was just complete mayhem, so he wrote down his little book and he called it Robert's Rules of Order, where he took his understanding of parliamentary procedure, and parliamentary procedure is the language that's housed inside of Robert's Rules of Order. And so it was, skinny enough to just slide inside of his uniform, and people loved the way he ran his meetings. So this is way back in 1876. The first edition was published. It's now gone through 12 revisions and it's over 700 pages long. And the book is part of the problem. It
There
is
is a
too
brief
long.
version.
There is a brief,
There's a
thank
brief.
God. That's all we need, right? That's right. And there is Robert's Rules Made Simple because it should be simple.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
really what I focus on is working with boards so that they understand how to use the fundamentals of Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you say, it was based on parliamentary procedure, and I think specifically
Mhm.
British Parliament at the time. And in the work that I do in my day job, I've encountered changes in legislation and so
Yeah.
forth. And our parliamentary procedure is now available online. You can watch recordings and stuff of what's happened in Parliament. And watching them follow Robert's rules is really, really interesting. And noting that now they have, 10-minute speaking slots, for example. And
Mhm.
she's like, oh, wow, all of this has come out of
There we
Robert's
go.
rules.
There
That's
we go.
really
Full
good.
circle. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and why do we have these rules? Because when you are making decisions, you have to have a decision-making process.
Yes.
And so that really is it. So when people say, "Oh, we use Robert's Rules of Order to run our meetings," I'm always like, that's half true. You
Mhm.
use Robert's Rules of Order to handle the business side of your meetings. Okay, so information items on an agenda are completely different than business items on an agenda. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's important for people to understand the distinction because Roberts helps boards handle their business.
Right. Okay. Uh, It kind of starts to answer my next question, actually, about what are the key benefits of using
Mhm.
Robert's Rules of Order in board meetings and how do they enable effective meetings?
Yeah, yeah, and the truth is, whether we enjoy having a bunch of rules or not, we need those rules in order to create order so that we can make business decisions. And so we want to make sure that we're creating a space where the voices of the majority and the voices of the minority are sitting around the same table and have the same opportunity to be heard. And so that really is a key component for me about why I think Roberts is such a great tool. And it's an underutilized team building tool on boards. And
Yes.
so when people don't have a collective understanding of the fundamentals, then the meetings are not going to run as effectively. So making sure that people understand the fundamentals is key to up leveling your meeting productivity.
When I was first trained in Robert's Rules and when I first read Robert's Rules in brief, I'm sure my first thought was exactly what most people will think, with the different types of motions, which I'll ask you about later. Uh, how does this actually make the meeting take less time when
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you're wording a motion and then someone's amending the motion and then you're voting on the amendment and then you're making other amendments
Yeah.
and things to get your
Yeah.
final wording? How does it make it more effective and save time?
Well, what I would say is that when people are like, "Well, how does that all work?" I don't really understand it. It's like speaking another language. So when you're learning a new language, it could feel cumbersome and daunting. But the
Hmm.
reality is once you get the fundamentals of the language, then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, okay, I understand the flow of this." Let me just start with this one piece because a lot of people, and this is very simple, because Robert's rules made simple. That's what I'm up to doing in the world, is that when you say motion, for the rest of your life, I want you to hear the word question.
Right.
Okay. A motion is nothing more than a question.
Mhm.
That's all it is. So what Robert says is that if there is a business question that the board is desiring to answer, you need to first start by making a motion. Ask the question. Why would you do that? Why would you first ask the question? But because if you have a group of people, because I see this in meetings all the time, and this is a life waster, this is a time waster, where you get into a meeting and people are talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and somebody goes, did somebody make a motion?
Yeah.
So
What's the
you've
problem we're
just
trying to solve?
yeah, you just wasted a whole lot of life. And so Roberts is saying, put the question on the table, see if at least one other person in the room thinks that question is worthy to talk about. And that's a second. I
Yes.
second the main motion. I second the question. And once that main motion receives a second, now the question belongs to the assembly.
Yeah.
And now we have a focused way of making decisions. Now, amendments, that's another one. You're like, well, gosh, doesn't that just a time waster? I'm sorry, that's as quick as humans can move. That's
Hmm.
we're not AI. We have to
Yeah.
break it down into small, manageable, bite-sized chunks, and so that's what an amendment is. It allows you to add something to or subtract something from the amendment.
And what you're doing in that process is getting a very strong, tight definition around the question so that everyone has a
Yes.
common understanding of what the question is and you're all
Oh,
answering the same question.
Oh, you give me the chills, Mark. You give me the chills because that doesn't happen very often, right?
No.
There's misinterpretations. Oh, I didn't know that's what you were saying. That's
Yeah.
why full arguments have been created. Marriages have ended because
Yes.
they didn't understand the question. You were arguing that question and she was arguing that question, and there was a breakdown. So, making sure that everybody understands what the main question is, the main motion, that really is the first step in creating clarity in getting to a decision.
Yes. Yes. Now, I've got a couple of favorite misconceptions about Robert's rules because, as I said
Okay.
before, it's very common that people run meetings using motions and seconding and so forth, but they've never heard of Robert's rules and
That's right.
never understood the detail. What are some of the common misconceptions about Robert's rules that you encounter?
Well, one that kind of personally drives me crazy. I'll go on my soapbox. I dislike, and Roberts now talks about it, friendly amendments. This concept. Have you ever heard of that? I don't know
No, I
if
haven't.
that's something that happens here in the States where someone will make an amendment and then there'll be somebody that says, well, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment. And then all of a sudden, the maker of the amendment and the person who's trying to make the friendly amendment are doing something. So wait a minute, it created a lot of confusion. And so Roberts actually addresses it now and says, whoa, as a chair, if somebody wants to make a friendly amendment, treat it as an amendment,
Right.
not as, they can't do some side brokering deal because once a motion has been moved and seconded, it no longer belongs to the maker of the motion. The maker of the motion is unimportant. Okay, okay. The maker of the motion is unimportant, and we need to get over the ego of that because
Yes.
once the motion has been moved and seconded, it now belongs
To
to
the
the
room.
assembly. So I
Mm.
think I just probably stated two things that bother me. The maker
Right.
of the motion is not that important, and I don't like when people try to use this tactic of friendly amendments.
It's funny that the maker of the motion is not important, but we do record the name of the maker of the motion in the minutes.
Okay, okay, that's
Um,
fine if you want to. Yeah,
no,
and you can, and
th-
yeah,
well,
yeah.
that's that. I thought that was standard. I thought
Well, for
such and such
okay, so
moves.
again, different organizations are going to do it differently, but what's most important about the meeting minutes is that the final motion that gets approved is recorded in the minutes. You
Right.
don't need to say this person moved, this person seconded, there was discussion that followed, and blah, blah, and then this person amended. Now, unless your bylaws and your constitution state different, or any of your any other laws, legalese, let me just say this. Robert's Rules of Order is the lowest ranking document in your organization. Your
Hmm.
organization's constitution and bylaws gives Roberts the authority to manage the business. Now, if there's anything in your constitution or bylaws that contradicts Robert's Rules of Order, you yield to the higher ranking document.
Yes, of course. Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear you, and I'm really pleased to hear you say that you don't need to record the mover of the motion, that it is because the motion belongs to the assembly, as you say. Because a conversation that I had recently was around suggesting that it this tendency for people to say this person moved, and one of my key frustrations is this person seconded, because Robert's rules is very clear that you don't have to record the seconder, because the
Yeah.
seconder doesn't even have to agree with the motion. They just have to
No,
think
no.
it should be
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah, they
Uh,
find it worthy to discuss. That's all. And
right.
so I think part of what part of what happens is people become almost like they're treating it like they're court stenographers. This
Yes.
person did this and this person said this and the debate was about this. And no, 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 no. It's you need to just make sure that we're very clear what was actually voted on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Excellent. And the other key frustration, the misconception that I come across, and I've seen this in constitutions, and yes, as you say, the Constitution overrides Robert's rules. It is a key frustration for me, this concept of the president or the chair having a casting vote.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
everyone in the room votes. You might have 7 or 9 people cast a vote, and if for some reason it's tied, the chair for some reason gets another vote. That doesn't feel very, very democratic to me, and that's a complete misreading of Robert's rules,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah,
in
no.
Roberts, and what I really like about Robert's rules is this concept that the chair doesn't vote unless their vote changes the decision.
Yes,
And
exactly. Because the chair, that makes sense because the chair really is there to facilitate the meeting and be a
yes,
steward of getting the board through the agenda. And so unless their vote influences the
the
vote
decision,
itself,
yeah,
a decision, then they just abstain from voting in order to maintain a little bit more neutrality.
yes,
I could say
yeah,
that word right, neutrality. Is that
neutrality, yes, yeah,
okay? I don't know why that sounded weird coming out of my mouth, but yeah. So that
yeah.
that
People have this kind of concept that if a vote is tied, then somebody needs to break the tie.
to
And
break the
Robert's rules
tie.
is very clear that if the vote is tied, it doesn't pass because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have a majority. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
need a casting vote. It's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
simple.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
no, okay. So,
Very fun. Very fun.
friendly amendments, though, that's one I'll have to look into a little bit more. Now,
Mm-hmm.
getting into the grunt a little bit, one of the things that we have talked about offline, but I'd like to ask you to give a bit of an overview.
Yeah.
What are the 7 key types of motion, and how do
Okay.
they work?
Okay. So when I come in and I do either my web-based training or clients purchase my Roberts Rules Made Simple individual training program or my board license so they can train their full board online, it is all around what I call the 7 fundamental motions. And so I've sat in hundreds of meetings and have done tons of trainings and what I have found is that if we can get everyone on your board to understand these 7 fundamental motions, it will up level the productivity of your meeting. Now, these motions are everyone needs to know how to make and vote on a main motion,
Mhm.
an amendment, amend the amendment, refer to a committee, postpone to a definite or a certain time, lay on the table, and previous question. So these are the 7 motions that I like to focus on. And what I have found is that once you up-level everybody's collective understanding of these 7 fundamental motions, if there's other more intricate questions that come out, there's at least a baseline understanding.
Yes,
Right?
right.
And it's like, okay, now, like, but sometimes people are asking questions and they don't even understand main motion and amendment. I'm like, well, let's slow it down. Let's make sure everybody understands. And I say there's 7 fundamental motions, but I encourage boards to start with the first 3: main motion, amendment, and amend the amendment. I cannot tell you how many meetings I have sat in, both within corporate settings, within school board settings, within university settings, within nonprofit settings, within real estate settings, like where people just don't understand those 3, the main motion, and then they stumble over amendments.
That's
And
interesting.
so
Okay.
start simple. Start with the basics. This is the roadmap, the 7, and these are the 3 you need to focus on. So my job is to get you to focus everybody's learning, because most Roberts trainings I've sat in on turn into a popcorn of, well, what about this? And what about this? And what
Yeah.
about this? People
Yeah.
don't learn like that.
Yeah.
People need a roadmap and people need to be able to make sure that we're all learning in pace and that we've learned the fundamentals, and now we open it up for a popcorn.
And it makes it easier for the chair too, when the conversation starts to stray off track, to bring people back to that motion.
Bring people, yes,
So the main
exactly.
motion, quite clear, somebody suggesting a question.
That's
And
the main question.
yeah.
Yes.
And so recording the words that were made in that motion, there's your main motion. Somebody suggests an amendment to that motion is, I'd like to add some words, delete some words, change some words in the main motion. An
Yes.
amendment to amendment clearly is, well, okay, your amendment's a great idea, but I'd like to tweak your amendment.
Hmm.
And the way Robert's Rules works is someone's tabling the main motion. If somebody makes an amendment, you discuss and vote on the amendment and then go return to the main motion.
You're not tabling the main motion. Let that go, right?
Okay, great. Thank
So
you.
it's not, yeah, it's not being tabled. It just is, okay, so I'll give you it's a pyramid.
Yes.
So what I want you to look at it is just stair steps. So the only thing we have on the in the pyramid, because that's the structure that houses Robert's Rules of Order. So in
Yes.
order to start handling your business, you start by making a main motion. I move. Is it seconded? Boom, we're in the pyramid. And then
Yes.
there's a series of stair steps. So someone says, I move to purchase XYZ for the blank company. And then
Yes.
someone says, well, I move to purchase 5 for the XYZ. Oh, I moved to strike out 5 and insert 7, right? So
Yes.
now what we have is a main motion, an amendment, and amend the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, you haven't tabled anything.
Right.
All of those motions are on the table. They're all
Yes.
there. But
Yeah.
you first are dealing with the amendment to the amendment,
Yes. And
right?
so,
And then you take those stair steps on the way down.
right. So
Yes.
you resolve the amendment to the amendment. Once that's resolved, you can refer to the amended motion. Once that's
No, not to
resolved,
the amendment motion, back to the amendment.
yes.
And then once you deal with the amendment, then you're down to the main motion,
Right. Right.
right?
Look,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they're the three fundamentals. Now,
Yes. Yeah.
you laid some other ones out. Refer, of course, is when you're saying, okay, we want to take this concept and take it outside of this board meeting to another group to have
Yeah.
them discuss it, make a decision, and bring it back. So you're referring to a committee, whether it's ad hoc or existing.
And now, again, let's look at why that's so important. And this is a really great indicator of the health of your organization. Do your boards trust their committees? Or are you serving in a organization where you've got a controlling board that has to make all the decisions, and so they're scrutinizing everything that the committees do? Why are committees created? Committees are created to save you life.
Yeah.
And so I like to look at the dynamic between the board and the committees, and do you have a board that's trying to micromanage, or are you really trusting your committees? So they're designed to save you life. So I move to refer this to the finance committee to report back to our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah, great.
So
A big lifesaver. And you get
mhm.
specialists involved by doing that as well. So that's the fourth
Yeah.
type. The fifth type.
Postpone to a definite or certain time.
Yes.
So this one is where, okay, we've got the motions on the table, but I'm not quite ready to vote yet. I need more time. I gotta go talk to my constituents. I need to do more research. So I move to postpone this to our May meeting.
Yes.
And why that's significant is because it gives a specific time for when it needs to be reported back. And
Yes.
that's why, and I'm going to just say this is a table, lay on the table is one of the most widely used, but it's one of the most widely misused, because you only lay a motion on the table in lieu of more pressing business. So if you're an experienced chair, if somebody says, I moved a table, the response should be in lieu of what business? And
Now,
it's like, CEOs coming in, that this is happening, we need to set up the room, whatever it is.
okay, so this is actually the one I was going to get to, because the first five I'm familiar with. Lay on the table. This is one that I think, oh, what is that motion? So is this a motion to take the current matter and delay it till later in the meeting? Is that what lay on the
No, so
table is?
because unlike a postponement or
Mhm.
postponed to a definite time or
That's to a
certain
future
time,
meeting. Yes.
but it could be, I moved to postpone this till 8 o'clock tonight.
Right.
So you could have any time. And what's
Yes.
powerful about a postponement, because what I would love for us to do is I want to frame the conversation and focusing on a postponement, because tabling it doesn't require a time frame to come back. So it's like,
Well,
okay, I moved to lay this matter on the table. And then it could just lay there forever. And then
ah,
in order to take you like get that item back, someone has to be astute enough at the next meeting to go, I moved to take that motion we laid on the table at the last meeting off the table. So there's a whole
Right.
nother motion that you have to use. I say
Oh,
this is what I say to my friends, because you're all my friends when I'm training. But we have the 7 fundamental motions. Focus on the first 3
yes.
and don't use lay on the table.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was
So
thinking when you were saying this. It's like, why would you want to use that? And what was the
thank
seventh?
you. Huh?
What was the seventh motion?
The 7th one is my favorite, right? This is one because it's called previous question.
Ah, yes. Yes.
Okay. And previous question is great because when I say previous question, based on the conversation we've been having, you should think previous motion.
Hmm.
But what it's saying is, hey, do you want to stop discussion on the previous motion and vote? So if 2/3 of the room says, yeah, let's stop talking, then we stop talking and we vote on the previous question or the previous motion.
Ah, right. Right. So it's saying, let's halt this conversation and get into the vote. We think we've had
That's right.
enough
Let's
discussion
be
now.
done, not just halt it. Let's be done. Maybe
Yeah.
halt means be done, but be
Yeah.
done, right? Like not
Yeah.
just stop it. Let's stop it completely.
Yeah. Right.
We're
Right.
ready to
And
vote.
you raise another good point there as well, that with Robert's rules, when you do dig into it, as a standard, different types of motions require different majorities and so forth. But let's not get
Yeah.
into those level of detail. Read the book.
All of that is
Um,
inside of Robert's Rules Made Simple. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
Robert's
and
Rules.
that's an online course too,
And
right?
and I wanted to say the reason that I created Robert's Rules Made Simple, beyond I love this material and I'm really
Yes.
good at teaching boring stuff in a way that's interesting, is I'm not a reader. I've read this entire book cover to cover. It's
I'm sorry.
really, page turner. So I can read, but that's not my learning style. And
Yeah.
so you'll see that inside of my training program, I really cater to all the various learning styles. I do have ebooks for those people who enjoy to read. I have audiobooks who are auditory learners like me. I have videos with examples who are more kinesthetic that like to be able to see it and all. And so it's that sense of like, I really wanted to be able to
Yeah.
cater to
Great.
all the different learning styles and do it in a way that was connecting the rules, not to just this is how you use it, but this
Yeah.
is how you do it in order to foster a healthy, productive meeting
And
dynamic.
I'll make sure that there's a link to Robert's Rules Made Simple, although it is easy to spell, Robert's Rules Made
Yeah,
Simple.com.
yeah, Roberts with an S, rules with an S, made simple. And what is also available that I think is so important is that you can buy it for yourself individually, my online training, or you can buy a board license, which is like
Mm.
really an effective way to provide Roberts training to everyone on your board for one low cost. And I think that's important to be able to do.
I think it is very important because you have, if you walk into a boardroom and one person or two people are familiar with Robert's rules and the rest of the board aren't, you're not
Oh,
really in a great space. You need
that's
everybody to be at
right.
the same, have at least a basic understanding so that you can use it effectively.
You're absolutely right.
You mentioned before sometimes board conversations that are around information, not around making decisions, not around the business. Are there situations where Robert's Rules of Order might not be applicable or where you need to adjust them for specific board settings?
Um, Interesting question. I don't know if I can think of something right off the top, but I think you're always adjusting everything when it comes to human beings, And so one of the main things is maybe I'll go in a different direction with the question is that I don't want people to adjust themselves to the rules, meaning your personality should be with using the rules. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Robert's Rules of Order is so boring, it's so dry." Well, it's boring and dry if you're boring and dry.
Yeah.
Okay, it's boring and dry if you're boring and dry. And that's what happens a lot of times in meetings that people check their personalities at the door. They leave their humanity outside. I'm like,
Mhm.
bring it in and then utilize the rules to support the people in the room. And so my meetings are not boring. My meetings are, a space where you want to be in and people feel connected and there's a sense of we're accomplishing something because that's who I am when I'm in the room. So the rules aren't boring. It's the people who are administering the rules are boring. And
Right.
so we have to find a way to bring a little bit more humanity into our boardrooms because we need to foster these dynamics that feel good. Right. Yeah.
One of the things that, I mean, Robert's rules are from memory. It's been a little while since I've read it. I don't think it talks so much about this is how minutes look. Uh, and when I was first trained in it, when we wrote the minutes, all we did was write the motion and the result of the motion. And one of the things that I've subsequently realized is very important is that in your board minutes, you really want to have the 2 or 3 key points that were discussed and why you've made that decision, because it's
Yeah.
going to be important to come back to that reasoning later to say, you made this decision. Is it
Yeah.
justified? If
Like the
you,
rationale.
yeah, you
Right,
want to
the
have that
rationale.
rationale
Yeah,
recorded in
and
minutes.
again, I really do think that the minutes are an interesting document based on kind of the culture of your organization. So
Yes,
that'll be reflected. There's going to be some obvious pieces that are the same with respects to this is the motion that was passed, but how much or how little other information you add, it really depends on kind of the
the
culture,
context.
the
Mm,
context of your your
yeah,
meeting.
right.
Mhm.
What challenges have you encountered when boards try to implement Robert's rules? And how
Well,
do you overcome them?
yeah, what I find is that a lot of times people will seek me out because they're like, my board needs to use Robert's Rules of Order, and they're wanting to use it because they're frustrated, and so it's almost like they're throwing the book at everybody for doing it wrong,
Yeah,
and so
yes,
I think that if you're on a board and you're thinking about implementing Robert's Rules of Order, you need to be very careful with respects to the way you introduce it to the members of the board, because people don't like to be told they're doing it wrong. They like to be inspired by an option that will help them maybe do it in a healthier way that will save them life.
yes,
You know,
yeah,
I've noticed
absolutely.
I've noticed a few dynamics in our meetings where conversations are going. We had an 8 hour meeting or a 7 hour meeting or 3 hour meeting, and that was really draining for me. And if it was draining for me, it was probably draining for you. And so I went out, I found this amazing woman online. She talks about this tool called Robert's Rules of Order. And I'm interested in maybe exploring if having a system like this would help us be more productive. So I would say if if you're wanting to introduce it, be very careful with the offer.
Yes, right. You
Yeah,
certainly want it to be a tool, not a weapon.
that's right.
One of the things that I found though when we started using Robert's rules is that you were able to, firstly, you could pull people back on track when they were sidetracked. There was a really
Mhm.
simple tool for that. Rather than relying on the chair to say, hey, come on, guys, let's get back to the point. You
Yeah.
could have somebody from the floor say, guys, we're off
Yeah.
track here.
Yeah, point
Let's
of
get back to the
parliamentary
motion.
inquiry. What are we talking about? Like that's what I love about Roberts is that yes, while the chair is in charge, there's tools and ways for the board members to say, "Hey, I'm done talking. Let's start voting," which is the
Yes.
previous question. There's
Yep.
ways for them to say, "Well, point of parliamentary inquiry, what are we talking about right now? What motion is on the floor?" You
Yes.
know, point of
Um,
information, can you remind me how much money is in the account?
yeah.
Like there's ways that you can interact with the chair to set them and the conversation up for success.
I found that the requesting information in particular was a really useful one. The
Yeah.
other thing that I found is it enabled you to pull back on repetition,
Yes.
particularly when you hold people to the ability to speak twice on each motion. And
Hmm.
rather than having the back and forward and everyone speaking half a dozen times and repeating things that have already been said, it's like
Yeah.
if you get that dynamic, having a chair that holds you to the rules and says you're only allowed to speak twice.
That's right. Yeah.
You've already had
Yeah.
your turn, buddy.
Right. That's right. That's right. And what I love is this word about if we are really inviting our board members to be rigorous about their discussion. And I'll also pull it over to information items, because
Yes.
if we're dealing with information items as a chair, when you're asking, does anyone have any questions? Does anybody have anything that needs to be clarified?
I
Because
think
if
that's
it's
important.
information, there should not be any questions or diatribes or, it should just be, do you need any clarification? Anybody need any clarification for this information that we just delivered to you?
Mm,
Oh yeah, could you clarify this? Could you repeat that? Could you tell me when this? Not like, well, I thought that was very interesting and I'd love to give my opinion about it. Nobody cares about your opinion right now. Are there any clarifications needed?
yeah,
Is
right.
that's the difference. And so in my webinar trainings and I'm working with clients, I hear Roberts and I hear information. Information should sound like this. Come on, let's go. Let's move. Keep it tight. Go, 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 go,
Yep.
go. Right?
Yep.
Roberts and business should sound like this. There's a rhythm. Is there a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded that. So there's a rhythm to the language of Roberts. And when
Yes.
that rhythm is predictable, it creates security and it creates trust. And you need that when you're handling your business.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a little bit about tools and resources. You've got, of course, Roberts Rules Made Simple that you can jump online and you've got your online training. We've got Roberts Rules in Brief, which is a
Yeah.
nice, easy read. You've got the doorstop at your end that people can read if they want to get into the detail. Are there any other resources or tools that you'd recommend?
Well, I would say that for those who are board chairs or individuals who have to support their chairs, I have a chair meeting with confidence online training that really is a powerful resource that's full of all kinds of scripts. Because the biggest question that I get from my board chairs who have to run meetings that use Robert's Rules of Order is, oh my God, Susan, what do I say when? And
Yeah,
so I've created e-guides and scripts to answer, like I have one book, ebook that says, what to say when, and it gives 40 scripted examples of how to make interventions when dealing with difficult meeting behaviors. And then I've got scripts on how to open the meeting using your high five context, right? Kind of setting the context of the meeting. And then also, how do you ask for the minutes? What do I say when? So it's all scripted. And it's just a
right.
really fantastic resource for those who need to chair meetings.
Cheat sheets. That's
Yeah,
what
and
we
there's
need more
cheat
of.
sheets. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Final question for you. What advice would you give to a new board director?
Mm, a new board director. I would say don't underestimate the importance of making sure that everyone on the board understands the fundamentals. They're there to handle business. The board is there to get business done, but many times boards are operating at such a deficiency in just understanding the basics of the decision-making process that's being used. And if that exists, it's going to make their job and everyone else's job a lot harder.
Yes, right, cool. Susan, again, thank you very much for your time. It's wonderful to talk across the ocean. I
Yeah.
would like to talk closer together at some point in the future if we can make that happen. But in the meantime, I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to seeing you soon and to seeing you next episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favorite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.